All right, hello YouTube. Welcome to the 13.1b patch notes. Mainly covering stuff that would impact ADCs, but since Garen is a critical strike juggernaut, it's really important for us to go over this stuff because it's largely going to change this itemization as well. So we're going to go ahead and head right on into it. Now, I think that with these changes, it's going to dynamically change how ADCs are played, how they itemize and prioritize their items, but it affects Garen too. We're going to see new itemization paths, new itemization choices. There's a lot of people asking me about what's happening in Mortal Reminder. So without further ado, we're just going to go ahead and get into it. Now, I'm not going to cover every aspect of the patch notes because I don't feel like it's pertinent to my content in particular for Garen. So, I mean, you guys have access to the patch notes. A lot of champions are getting preemptively nerfed. But I think it's a good sign that Garen is not one of those champions. So, really good in regards to, because he'll be able to use this new itemization changeover at full power. Really quickly, what I will say though, Ori getting buffed is really bad for Garen mid. They are nerfing Ryzen Kassadin, which could free up a ban, and you might be able to switch to Orianna. But with how this changes, especially with how they're adjusting certain mages, Garen mid might be a bit tougher, especially if you see a lot of Orianna in this upcoming patch in your respective MMR, because she's probably one of the strongest control mages to take versus Garen because of how easily she can cut out. And almost every Ori player takes Phase Rush. So yeah, very tough. Yeah, if you guys want to go Garen bottom, well, congratulations, your support is no longer existing. She's just gone. She's dead. So Garen ADC also got nerfed. Guys, lock in Senna with Garen, otherwise you have no chance. Oh yeah, also Zoe got buffed too. Yeah, so Garen mid essentially got nerfed this patch too. So will we be seeing more Garen top lane? Who knows? Alright, let's talk about the fire item adjustments. Now, I'll talk very quickly about Eclipse because everybody asks me about this item from time to time. Do I consider this item to be viable on Garen? They're removing the Omnivamp. So I feel like if they're shifting power into the item, taking away from the Omnivamp, that's a good thing for Garen because Garen gets an Omnivamp penalty because his strongest non-ultimate damage ability is AoE, and Omnivamp is penalized in most AoE abilities. So unless you're playing versus like 3 to 4 melee champions and they're mosh pit stacking on you, it's just not good. So what they're doing in exchange is giving you 15 ability haste. And they're reducing the cooldown on the shield. Will this be beneficial for Garen? I don't particularly know. I feel like if you were to combo this with like Starax, it already means that you're going to have 3 shield sources, which makes Garen vulnerable to Serpent's Fang. So I don't know if I really like this item. Will Garen players try it? Most definitely. But I just don't see a specific niche purpose for it. So that's one of the reasons why I feel like I'm not going to be picking it up. So, yeah, that's all my thoughts about it. If you guys want to try it out, feel free. Same thing I think applies to Gore Drinker, too. It is interesting, though, that they're giving it health. So, like, I feel like that you could wind up with, like, a tankier Garen with, like, the ability haste that gives you, which is interesting. But, again, unless you're taking this versus a very melee-heavy team comp, I feel like there's no value in it. The champions, the best Gore Drinker champions in the game are people who already have great mobility and kit. Like Jarvan, Lee Sin, Riven, Kayn, etc., etc. Ravenous Hydra has been nerfed from Omnivamp to Lifesteal. Lifesteal is even worse for Garen because it doesn't even apply in Garen's spin. You get 5 extra ability haste. It's nothing really too crazy. I would not recommend this item on Garen. If you guys want to try it again, up to you. Mama Mortis is interesting because like this has been a direct competitor for Starax for some time. Even though I don't build this item too much, they are changing it from Omnivamp to Lifesteal. I think that's worse for Garen overall. They are giving the item 10 attack damage, which is nice, but I don't know if that's that's equivalent to what Omnivamp was offering Garen, even though it was penalized. I feel like what feels really bad about this item now is that they removed the ability haste altogether. So I'm going to say just pass on this. If you guys want magic resistance, get Force of Nature or Wit's End. Don't forfeit Starax Gauge for this item. Alright, let's talk about Death's Dance now. It got 10 extra attack damage, which is noticeable. 5 extra armor. They scrapped the ability haste, which is definitely a big hit. And then they also nerfed the healing ratio on the item by a grand whopping 70%. They changed up the item recipe, so it's a bit more accessible, it looks like. although it involves double pickaxe, which is really, really weird. Um, yeah, most likely you're never going to have the space for all the inventory components at this point where Garen assembles it, so you got to bear this in mind. It's always going to be awkward assembly timing for Garen because you normally don't want to go for Death Stance like first or second item. It's almost always third or fourth or fifth. So could you pick this up against an AD heavy team comp? Yeah, you could. It still has value versus mages too. Yeah. If you guys are ever planning on going Spirit Visage, you guys are taking your Conqueror builds, pairing it with Spirit Visage, of course. Pretty good value there. But yeah, other than that, I have not been building this item too much. Some other Garen players do build it. I don't really find as much value in this item, unless the enemy team comp is 80 heavy, which is where you want the armor to apply. All right, let's talk about the best item change for Garen this season. The absolute no-brainer. That is Black Cleaver. So Black Cleaver got 5 attack damage and 50 HP. Straight up buff. No changes whatsoever other than a straight up buff. Cleaver has been good for Garen for some time. Expect to build Cleaver. The amount of value you get through Cleaver is insane. You basically just get free stats. So if you guys weren't a Cleaver believer, you should start being one starting tomorrow. So, all right. So with that said, let's go ahead and talk about the Grievous Wounds changes. Yeah, so what they're doing is they're blanket changing everything. So even tier 1 Grievous Wounds items apply 40%. That's good. That's really good for countering healing. Garen's not particularly a heal-heavy champion. Some of the playstyles Garen takes don't even involve healing in combat, so even better for him. These changes don't really affect him too much. Only if you take Conqueror Garen will these changes matter. So is this another nerf to Conqueror Garen? Yes, it is. I feel like Conqueror Garen has been nerfed after nerfed after nerfed. They did this with Legend Tenacity. They're about to change the coding for how Tenacity stacks, so Conqueror Garen's nerfed even further. And now they're nerfing Grievous Wounds, which will affect the healing that you get from Conqueror. So, again, nerf after nerf after nerf. For Executioner's Calling, they're nerfing the AD by 5, but then it's 40% Grievous Wounds. I feel like this is just a flat-up buff. Yeah, especially if you're rushing this item to counter certain champions. This is going to be incredibly good versus the likes of Salas because now you can actually trade with him in lane compared to him just you dealing half his health bar and damage and then he heals half his health bar back, which is kind of nutty. So, really, really good there. Kenpunk Chainsword's attack damage looks like it got reduced by 5. This is a little bit weird in the patch house because I know it gives more than 20. Yeah, this is really weird. For like a tankier Garen build, I still think this is a viable option. It still has ability haste as far as I'm aware. So still a solid option if you guys are trying to go for like a tanky Garen build and you guys want some Grievous Wounds to upgrade the Executioners. But let's talk about like the big elephant in the room right now. Mortal Winder. Everyone is asking me right now about this item. And people are like, oh, RISTE, what do we do? What do we build now? Because it looks like we can't build Mortal Winder anymore. Well, I'm going to say in response to that, no, you can still build this item. It's just that it's going to serve a specific purpose for you. But let's talk about the stats and how it actually benefits Garen, right? So they're scrapping Zeal from the build path. Right? Now it's just you need Lasso's Burst. So this is almost similar to like Mortal Minder in previous seasons. If you think back like 4 or 5 seasons ago when Mortal Minder was basically armor pen based. This is basically a new iteration of that. So what's also noteworthy is that there's no attack speed now. So this does not add to Garen's spin count. What instead it does is gives 30% armor penetration. That is from second 1 of fighting somebody. Now, if you guys have noticed in some of my videos, when I want to go ahead and operate in the side lane, I build Lord Domino's Regards. Because that thing gives 35% armor penetration, and that allows me to amplify my damage by a big margin. It's a damage amplification item. So what we're going to do here is you can build this item if you're planning on team fighting and they're stacking armor and they're heal heavy. Think about any Drain Mage who is building armor, you know, like Frozen Heart, Hourglass, Swain, etc., etc. Kassadin, this is going to be pretty good versus Kassadin, especially Conqueror Kassadins. Vladimir's who get the Hourglass late game. There still is going to be application of this item. It's just that you may not build this every game. So people are asking, oh, RISTE, so many Garen players build Mortal Minder second. What do we do now? I'm going to give you guys a straight up answer because if you guys have been observant as to what I'm doing, I don't even build Mortal Minder in all my games. So all I got to tell you is build Zeal after your first item and tier 2 boots, sit on it, and then figure out what you got to do next. Right? Zeal is over 100% gold efficient. It provides such amazing value for Garen in stats. It allows you to achieve 11 spins and in a timely manner while also getting you closer to 12 spins towards level 15, 16, 17. It's just really good. So just get Zeal second and then figure out what you got to build next. If you guys really miss the movement speed from Mortal Minder, just get Zeal. That's all I got to say, realistically. The only thing you're going to be missing out on is 2% MS, but I still take that penalty and I still win games anyway, so it's not really that big of a deal. All right. Now, what is interesting, though, is that it competes still with Lord Domino's regards. What they even did was they added 5 attack damage to it. So, will there be games that you build Lord Dominic's over Mortal? Yes. You have to count the amount of sources they have for healing. If it's 1 or less, or they have a significant heal source, and the champion is just simply not ahead because the champion's 0-5, and the heal champion's not a big threat, go for this item, right? So, Garen, because he stacks HP pretty naturally, sometimes doesn't use the Giant Slayer passive. So very rarely will this passive ever come into play when you're playing versus like champions like Sion, Cho'Gath, etc., etc. You mainly take it for the armor pen. Yeah, mainly take it for the armor pen. I think overall Mortal Minder will probably be the better choice, seeing all these changes come into place. But you still don't want to discount what Lord Domino's can do, especially since it does have a little bit more of a damage advantage over Mortal. Let's talk about the defensive item options now. Now, Garen has not been able to build Thornmail and Bramble Vest for some time. The reason why is because he was never ever able to activate the Greater Grievous Wounds, because you had to hit your opponent with hard crowd control. That's something that Garen could not do unless he built Everfrost, and if you're building Everfrost, then you're straight up trolling. So they decided to revert that and bring it back to its original origin, or now Bramble Vest will apply Greater Grievous Wounds on Pod and getting hit. This is really crazy because you get 6 damage back and 40% Grievous Wounds upon being struck by an opponent. This is really good if you fall behind or you feel like you're struggling versus the likes of Aatrox, Olaf, and Fiora. So yeah, Fiora players, after getting nerfed, it looks like the Bramble Vest is going to be a really good pickup for them. Now, does that mean build Thornmail into the likes of Fiora? I'm going to say no. You would want to build Bramble Vest and just sit on it. I think that might be good. And just bear in mind, guys, that Bramble Vest, if you do build it, does not apply a stack of Phase Rush. So you still have to work around that. But could be a really good defensive pickup versus certain champions who are extremely heal heavy. Thornmail, I think, is going to be a great choice if you're playing versus auto attack heavy, AD heavy team comps that are not specifically buying into Critical Strike. So Thornmail is going to have to compete with Random Omen, which is downright insane in terms of the damage reduction department, because you get the Cold Steel passive, and then you also get the Critical Strike reduction passive, which is permanent, plus the active. So you'll have to choose carefully here. If they are really healing a lot, think of champions like Draven with Bloodthirster, like the likes of like Olaf, for example, Rost. Thornmail might be a really, really good pickup here. But if you're playing versus like Yone, Yasuo, Caitlyn, any champion who's going to be Critical Strike heavy, you will have to consider Thornmail over random ones. Sometimes it may not be worth it. All right, so you will see Garen players build this again, but make sure that the item is purposeful. Don't just build it because you have the option to build it. It has to be built with purpose, okay? All right, now let's get into the stuff that we really were waiting for here, the ADC class adjustments. Basically Critical Strike items, when these Critical Strike items can also be built by Garen. So they're basically changing this so ADCs can power spike earlier. Will this eventually buff the ADC class? I think it is. A lot of writers are basically chalking this up to say, oh, the ADC class is going to be more satisfying. But I already know, like, when it comes to player satisfaction in League of Legends, a lot of that satisfaction is attributed towards just feeling strong and feeling good about making impact over the game. You can't accomplish that without just having your champion being strong. So is this buffing the ADC class? Essentially it is. But Garen is in a bit of a unique case compared to other Juggernauts because he actually wants to go for these items. So let's look at the first two here, Infinity Edge and Navori Quick Blades. Now, they changed it so you can go ahead and activate the item's passives at 40% critical strike. So what that essentially means is that you, after completing Mortal Reminder, you can plop one of these into your inventory, then choose to round out Garen's build with more durability. I think this is a really, really interesting choice and potentially very valuable if you are ahead and you can afford the luxury of these items, even though they don't offer any durability, while pivoting to more defensive options as the course of the game goes on. What I'm seeing from the get-go, though, is that I still do believe that Navori will be stronger than IE. The reason why is because, as far as I'm aware, in coding, Navori Quick Blades, for some ungodly reason, is still amplifying Garen's damage on ultimate, which is really nutty because rank 3 Garen ultimate is already insane. Amplifying with Navori means you're killing people at essentially potentially half HP, which is downright nutty. So I really think that the option here, guys, in all scenarios is basically the Navori Quick Blades, because I think even with the damage amplification, based on what people are telling me with their numbers crunching, is that you'll still do just as much damage with Garen's spin, but then you get the added ability haste. You also get the added extra damage on R. So consider that, and yeah, give it a try. Let me know how you guys feel about that. I don't feel like we need to cover Bloodthirster because I don't believe it's a viable item for Garen, so we're going to skip over that entirely. Now they're going to be talking about how they're basically cleaning up ADCs by giving them more accessible mana regen. I want to let you guys know that this also buffs ADCs because what they're doing is they're freeing up several ADCs about their dependency for presence of mind. What that means is that they're going to be able to take Overheal and Triumph now. That essentially gives them more agency in their rune choices, which essentially is a buff. So this cleanup, don't be deceived. It's another buff. Like several ADCs are just getting buffed straight up. And there's so many ADCs that are even getting hit here with the buffs. Even Senna's getting hit with buffs. All right, lastly, we'll go ahead and talk about some other items that apply to Garen in very niche circumstances. I don't feel like Garen players will play the Ruin King, so we're going to go ahead and skip over that entirely. Essence Reaver is a bit more interesting. I've been tinkering with the item, especially trying to commit the split pushing. I feel like the extra 10 attack damage is really interesting for only 100 gold. That essentially is a big boost in gold efficiency. So keeping that in mind, I think that like this could be a pretty interesting pickup if you do choose to go for a split push with Strikebreaker and you're taking phase rush and you want to hit towers a bit harder. Could be a really interesting pickup. Will it actually see potent play among the high-elo Garen players? I don't particularly think so. I could be wrong. Maybe some people will be power spiking a second item after Zeal. That could be actually maybe a good idea. I'm going to see if I can make that item work myself, but it remains to be seen what the placement of that item will be in Garen's build overall. It could be a option choice for you after completing it to go ahead and lead into your Navori. So you could go for Zeal, Essence Reaver, Navori, and then hopefully run out your build later with some durability because you're probably building glass up to that point. All right, and I feel like the rest of the changes here basically depict upcoming skins and ARAM changes. I did ask a writer about the tenacity stacking because that is a big thing that's affecting Garen right now and other champions who stack tenacity. They are altering the coding and the mathematical sequencing for how tenacity stacks. And Garen is a champion who can stack tenacity pretty easily because if you take on Flushing, you take Legend Tenacity, you take both. That stacks with Garen's W. They're changing the formula, so I'm assuming that what's going to happen is now he's going to get less value with that stacking because it's going to be like a hard multiplicative stack with Garen's W, which means that he's getting essentially less tenacity, less slow resistance if you're taking Sotis, etc., etc. So I feel like that's going to be a nerf to Garen overall, but it doesn't look like it's heading this patch. It's hitting next, so be on the lookout for that if they're going to reveal the algorithm or whatever have you. But yeah, overall, I think this is going to be a really good patch for Garen. ADCs do get buffed. But what is really cool, though, is that it looks like Garen has potential options to be extremely, extremely damage heavy, to be able to take out the various ADCs that are going to be surfacing in your games, especially with how easily they're going to be able to power spec now, because now I can go into 2-item power specs. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Very, very exciting. There's going to be a lot of theory crafting going on. Even I won't know what's going to be optimal when this patch hits. But yeah, thanks everybody for joining us in this discussion video. Let us know in the comments what you think the next OP Garen build's going to be. And we'll see you guys in the next video, of course. Thanks so much for supporting the channel. I'll see you guys later. And Demacia. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.